What's going down? Back at it with another Thor's Thoughts. I am Thor. This is Thor's Thoughts, Rick and Morty, Season 3, Episode 8, Morty's Mind Blowers. After last week, which many are calling the greatest Rick and Morty episode of all time, and it was a extremely good episode. This was definitely more of a, I'm not going to say a filler episode, because Rick and Morty episodes don't need to be watched concurrently. There's not like an on-running story. There is, but there isn't. But this is kind of like a filler episode. So let's unpack it. No Brian tonight, so running Han Solo. Morty's Mind Blowers. Let's unpack this. So it starts off, they're running through like a labyrinth. You know, like the end of Labyrinth when there's all these stairs. There's a name for the type of painting it is, but it's not coming to me. So they're running through like a labyrinth-y looking place, and there's some dude in black chasing them, and they have this turtle that has jewels and is like glowing. And Rick's like, don't look at the turtle. So he looks at it, and what's it called? It's called the truth tortoise. But then so Morty looks at it, and he like gets all the knowledge of everything, and he like can't unmemorize or, you know, can't forget anything. So the whole crux of the story is Morty stares into the truth tortoise, learns too much, and needs to have his memory wiped. So they kind of get back. They're sitting down to watch some interdimensional cable, and he's like, I can't deal with this, Rick. You know, wipe my mind. And he's like, again? And he's like, what do you mean again? So he takes him down in kind of the hall of erased memories, I guess you'd call it. So there's all these different blue, red, purple memories, and they start plugging them in, and he starts showing them all the erased memories. And there's like ones of like some dude named Mr. Loonis, who Morty ends up getting to kill himself by getting him fired from his job. There's like a collector who collects people, and then Rick and Morty trap Earthlings to like make a device to transport to where they are and then steal the device and leave the people behind. There's just a lot of different mess ups. It's like all the greatest mess ups that we haven't seen throughout Rick and Morty adventures, or just Rick and Morty or whatever. But, so then there was one where mom has to pick between her two children, and she picks Summer. There's one where Morty has like a giant worm and he's like throwing up. And then there's one where like an alien comes to die, and he wants Rick to kill him because if he dies by a great warrior's hand, it's like honorable, and he goes to this like great place. And then Morty's like, are you sure it exists? Like, you actually have proof of the afterlife? So he ends up getting killed by a car after deciding he didn't want to get killed because he didn't have proof, and ends up getting like pulled into like their hell. So he ends up finding it's real. It was just a lot of comical, hilarious stuff. If last week was, you know, weird and effed up storytelling, this week was all lighthearted, funny mess ups. Like I said, more of a kind of a filler episode, but funny filler. I laughed more in this episode this week than I did in last week's episode. So then he kind of figures out that the blue ones are his mess ups, the purple ones are his family mess ups, and the red ones are kind of things Rick wants to erase. So not necessarily times Rick messed up, but like Rick is saying, instead of granted, he's saying granite, and like Morty makes fun of him, so he like erases that from his mind. There's just a lot of like little good parts in this episode. Like I said, it wasn't super story driven like the last episode, or had that just I hate using the word, but weird effed up twist like last week's. This week was much more Rick and Morty centric and lighthearted, but not really adventure, just kind of clips of multiple different adventures. So then we had the commercial break, and right before the commercial break, they start fighting, and they both erase each other's minds. So right before the commercial break, they erase each other's minds. We come back from commercial. They're kind of trying to figure out now who they are. So they start plugging in memories into Morty's wearing the helmet that like he gets to see the memories that they plug in. And there's one of like him masturbating an alien that they're trying to interrogate. There's one with like zip ties. It's like a magnet, and Rick turns it on and it pulls all the zip ties in his shop because he couldn't find a zip tie. So then Morty walks over after Rick's doing something. He must have typed in like Jessica or redheads, because then all of a sudden all these redheads start flying and smoking the house and getting broken in half on the garage door. It was pretty entertaining. Like I said, there were a lot of good, funny clips. I laughed a ton throughout this whole episode, which I really didn't do a ton last week. But last week, I will say, is a better episode than this episode was. But I enjoyed myself more with this episode than the last episode. If that makes any sense to anybody out there, then you're with me. Then there was another memory where he had squirrels, so he could hear what animals were saying, right? And he came across a bunch of squirrels, and they were talking about pretty much how they run the world. And they're like talking about Monsanto's and Africa and all these like big companies and like taking down Guatemala or some like South American country. And they're like, just like we did this other one. And he hears them, and they see him staring. So then all these squirrels converge, and Rick has to hit this button, knock them all out. And they're like, we got to change realities again. I told you we can only do this a few times. It was like I said, there were a ton of good memory points throughout this whole thing. And then Morty just starts sticking all of the memories in his head, and they start going through a whole bunch of montages of different stuff. I didn't have time to write all of that down. But then Summer shows up, and she's like, what's going on down here? And she goes, this is a scenario 2. No, this is a scenario 4. So she walks over to this cabinet, and she cracks cracks this red thing in half and opens it up in the scenario. It says, tranquilize Rick, Morty, put the helmet on him, put the blue vial in Rick, let it sit, then do Morty, put us back upstairs, turn on interdimensional cable, crack smelling salts, and then leave the room. So she does all that, but she doesn't leave the room, and then she cracks the salts. They wake up, and they're both pissed. They're like, what the hell, you dumb bitch? How'd you let us fall asleep, you stupid bitch? And they start like going off on her. Where they're watching interdimension cable and like, fuck this, we're outie. So they get up and they're like, let's go on a classic Rick and Morty adventure. And then that was it. That was the end of the episode. And like I said, it was not on the level of last week's episode with just the intense storytelling and the multitudes of different storylines intertwining at the end for all that messed up story-driven stuff to happen. This was, like I said, just mess-ups, lighthearted funniness, just a really just good basic Rick and Morty episode. You know what I mean? They've done these type of episodes before, different twists on them, but they work every time. And then in the last part, Jerry shows up, and there's like a VHS attached to Jerry's helmet, and it says Jerry's Mind Blowers. He puts it on, and it's a time of him killing an alien by leaving him in his car. He was supposed to go to like the meat place so this alien could escape Earth, and he's sitting there playing on his phone when they walk in his apartment, and the alien's dead in his car, like he left a baby in the car. It was a nice touch to the end of the episode. And the next week's episode is going to be a Beth and Rick episode, so that should be all right. I mean, we've had one of those this season, and it was Pickle Rick. So if it's even close to Pickle Rick, I'm in, but that's a pretty high bar. So, but I'm going to give this episode, I'm going to start grading kind of the episodes I review on Thor's Thoughts like we do with Wrestling in the Basement with WWE pay-per-views. This is going to get a B+. Not, last week was probably an A+. This week a B+. Good episode, solid episode. Nothing earth-shattering or mind-blowing, even though it's called Morty's Mind Blowers. But check it out. Tell us what you think. Tell us your grade in the comments. Tell us a reason why you're giving it that grade. Check out Basement Boy Banner, the main show. Thor's Thoughts, obviously, this show. Wrestling in the Basement. No Mercy's coming up next week, so we'll have a new Wrestling in the Basement next week. Gamer Corner. Brian's going to do one. Tell him, Brian, do a Gamer Corner. But until the next video, like, share, and subscribe. I'm Thor. This was Thor's Thoughts. Deuces.